How's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a weekend. It is the Earthmaster here on this Saturday, April 6th, 2024. Couple days off from the eclipse. We'll check out the weather details here and cloud coverage in just a little bit. Latest activity here on the globe shows a 1.4 into the Alaska area. Make sure the bells are off here, which they weren't. Good thing I checked. Some movement out here across California coming in right now with a 3.4 earthquake on the Hayward Fault. This one's definitely overdue in terms of potential large-scale activity. But for now, it looks like a 3.4 earthquake coming into the area. About 20 minutes or so ago, I'm sure this was felt. Let's see, quite a few folks felt it around the Bay Area. Not a big earthquake, but anything above 3 will definitely be felt out here. Quite a few responses coming into the area around San Francisco and whatnot. Just some light shaking. And as you can see here, being reported just as that. Just some weak to light shaking going on. Either way, a little bit of uptick out here across the West Coast. Hayward Fault, very capable of producing some damaging earthquakes. And this is one of the fault systems here that geologists are more concerned about. Hayward Fault and also the Calaveras Fault Zone. Definitely overdue for some big quake activity. But for now, like I said, a little bit of movement out here. Looks like they had a small little aftershock coming in with a 0.7. Over here to the west, got a 1.4 earthquake coming in early this morning as well. That is on the plate boundary, the San Andreas Fault, about 7 kilometers from the San Francisco Zoo. Down south, another earthquake here on the San Andreas Fault, a 1.8. So things are looking a little bit more active out here today across the California region. One lonesome earthquake way up north this morning, a 1.9, 17 kilometers underneath this area that is associated with the Cascadia megathrust subduction zone. All right, a look down south into extreme southern California here. Not quite as active as up north. A handful of smaller quakes, really not a whole lot to report. If we pull up the 2.5 and above, it shows one earthquake there from yesterday. That was a 2.6. But aside from that, small microquake activity out here today in Southern California. Through the Pacific Northwest up here, a couple smaller quakes in the last 24 hours, including a 1.8. Looks like that's just off the Highway 12 area. Beautiful road up here. I love taking this little back road here through the mountains in the summertime. Absolutely stunning scenery. 1.8 up there in Washington. Doesn't look like anything's going on here across Yellowstone National Park, but let's just double check, see what's going on here, if there is anything. I see a couple small earthquakes right here in the last 24 hours, but really not a whole lot going on up there across that area of the country. Texas, Oklahoma, roughly the same. In the New Madrid seismic zone, a 1.9 coming in once again. That brings up the total tally out here to about 6 earthquakes. New Madrid seismic zone, very capable of producing some upper 7 magnitudes, and it's been well over 200 years since it's done so. So therefore, stress is definitely building out here across this area. Some small movement quakes here south into the around the Great Smoky Mountains area, and also a little earthquake activity down in South Carolina with 1.2. Now New Jersey here, still seeing some movement overnight with a couple other earthquakes here just after midnight. Looks like at least 5 of them, including a 2.5. So this brings up a total tally here to 30 earthquakes. A lot of people forget to check the all magnitudes box here. I know a few comments there on my last video stated that the USGS only showed 2 earthquakes. And that would be the case if you were to only bring up, say, for example, the 2.5 and above. This one here shows 4, but you got to check all the magnitudes here. These are earthquakes nonetheless, and that's a decent sequence of events out here across this area of New Jersey. 30 earthquakes, right? Still potential, right? Obviously, we still have a little potential of seeing some larger scale movement out here that can get into the lower 5 range, which is definitely a little bit stronger than a 4.8 that we've seen, but we'll continue to watch it. Definitely got some interesting earthquake activity ramping up out here in the last couple days. All right, let's see what else we got here on the Earthquake 3D globe. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet now. Not a whole lot going on through the divergent boundaries out here. South America region, a handful of earthquakes all across the Peru-Chile Trench, but really nothing of concern. There's the Alaska area up there, quite a few microquakes, but let's see what we got. Bring up the 2.5 and above. Shows a little bit of activity here today, 2s and 3s. Did have an upper 3 coming in way over here across the Aleutian Islands area. Fairly deep as well, about 100 kilometers deep into this subduction zone right here. A major subduction zone. Big time earthquakes take place up here. That we know. One little earthquake way up off the coast of Russia from late last night. Looks like a 4.5 coming into that area. And still keeping my eye on the Kuril Kamchatka. That's a definitely a subduction zone that I feel is well overdue for release of strain. Yesterday activity there in Japan. Doesn't look like anything new has popped off there for now. Taiwan, though, seeing quite a bit of earthquake activity today in the aftershock department. Let's pull this up and see what we got. Looks like the latest one, a 4.8, about 8 o'clock this morning my time. There's a couple 5s in there, too, as well, from the last 24 hours. So if we bring up the last 7 days of activity out here, they got about, well, almost 70 earthquakes. And, of course, the main quake's going to be that 7.4 that struck here. So very common to see this many earthquakes, and sometimes even more, from a 7.4 magnitude earthquake. It's very common. There's quite a few 5s, quite a few 4s, quite a few 3s and 2s, and so on. One thing I haven't really noticed out here is the aftershock sequences in the 6 range. We only had one 6.4 immediately following the main quake. So that's a good sign. Otherwise, we could probably say that things were going to get a little bit more active out here in terms of a larger magnitude, but I don't think that's the case. Just seeing some 4s and 5s. Again, very common with a 7.4 earthquake magnitude there. Another earthquake here across the Mariana Trench. This area has definitely seen a bunch of activity here recently. We look at the last 7 days, seen some big earthquakes. 6.2 back in earlier this month. It looks like a few days ago. There's that 6.8 there from yesterday, but early in the morning yesterday time frame is not showing up there. That was a little bit further up north here, it looks like. 222 kilometers for that super deep, large earthquake there yesterday. The latest one, though, shows a 4.8, a little bit further down south here, so that tells me that this region here is still underneath quite a bit of strain out here from the Pacific plate that sits just to the east. Filipino plate here, definitely getting a crunch, so to speak, going on with it. All the arrows pointing in this direction. This is the Pacific plate here in the yellow, all moving off to the northwest, along with the Filipino plate. So things are jammed up over here across this area, but we're still noticing quite a bit of strain built up on the eastern side of this plate boundary here. Around Papua New Guinea area, looks like the latest one shows a 5.1, 64 kilometers deep. A couple deep earthquakes overnight as well in the region in general. 4.2, 198 kilometers here into the subduction zone. The majority of these are pretty deep. Look at that. Except for this one last night. So got to watch this area. Deeper quakes out in the subduction zone areas normally means that there's some larger scale potential out here at the surface levels getting ready to take place. Across the Tonga area, most of this activity here from yesterday, some 4s and 5s there. Don't think we've got anything new coming up there. New Zealand, still seeing quite a bit of adjustment going on here with some 3s in the last 24 hours. Let's go check out the GeoNet servers real quick. Let me bring this up and see what's going on down there in this area of the world. 6 hours ago, 3.9 coming in. Looks like that's on the plate boundary itself. The Alpine Fault, 5 kilometers deep there for that quake. Excuse me. A couple other earthquakes out here as listed. There's going to be that's that 5.1 earthquake that's being reported. Now, I'm not for sure why. Let's see here. Let me go back. Check this out. So 5.1 coming in yesterday time period, because they're in the future. It's already the 7th over there. That's a pretty decent earthquake there on the Alpine Fault. Looks like a couple other earthquakes in the vicinity as well. USGS not really showing it. I'm not for sure why it's not here on the Earthquake 3D globe either. Look at that. Not being reported. I don't want to go weeks back, but it doesn't look like the EMSC is reporting it or the USGS as far as that 5.1 goes. So let's look at this, see if it's a legit earthquake. Obviously, it looks like it is because quite a few folks reported feeling this quake, about 1,400 or so. Let's check out the drums here and see if we can spot it. If it's a 5-pointer, it should be pretty visible out here. And I think I see it. Can you guys spot it? Pretty decent signature right here of that 5.1, along with some 2s and 3s following that 5-pointer within the vicinity right here. Definitely looks like things are stirring up out here as expected. 5-pointer though, I mean, that's decent adjustment, but there's so much more of a higher magnitude out here that these guys can experience. And I don't know if a 5-pointer is enough to relieve the strain out here across quite a few areas, including obviously the plate boundary up here. Got the Hikurangi subduction zone offshore here at the eastern edge. That area has seen quite a bit of deep activity lately, and minimal surface adjustment going on upstream following all the deeper activity, but it looks like things definitely want to move out here across the area of the plate boundary here across South Island. Decent signature there, so we'll continue to watch that. I really don't want to throw GeoNet servers up on the globe to keep track of what's going on, because they have issues on occasion here. They'll throw up some phantom earthquakes that take place in Japan when the earthquake was way over here across India. So I don't like to have the Earthquake 3D globe cluttered with false information. So I got to leave them off, but I will obviously check the GeoNet servers here when earthquake activity is of interest, like it is right now. Quite a bit of activity stirring up there around the South Island region. We'll continue to watch that and report back on anything. Out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, well, a couple 2s and some 1s. Nothing major going on. A little swarming going on here across the summit area. But this is very typical. A little bit from yesterday and a little bit from today. The latest information here from the USGS Volcanoes program. See if they're up and running, which they are. Still shows the volcano there, Kilauea Volcano, in the yellow. And I believe they're still putting out just weekly updates. So it'll be a little while before, another 2 days or so. No more, somewhere around there, around the 8th or 9th, maybe on Monday, we'll see an update from these guys in terms of any new information. But looking at the earthquake chart, doesn't show a lot. The inflation chart here as well looks fairly normal. This is the last 30 days of inflation. Notice the stair-stepping event going on. And that's very common, obviously, when a area below is recharging with magma. But we're not quite to the level that we've seen back earlier this year, where we were fairly well heightened in terms of inflation at the summit. But it does look like it's coming up pretty close. This is a GPS system there across the summit region. Back in the end of January, 1st of March, we've seen a huge displacement of magma from the summit. That's why it deflated like that. Not to the surface. It went a little bit further off to the southwest rift zone as a magma intrusion area to the southwest. But we're coming back up in terms of inflation there in the region. Yeah, definitely keep an eye on California. All right, further out and about here. Let's see if we got anything else going on here. A couple earthquakes from today, it looks like, around India. One earthquake here in Pakistan, looks like, 4.3 coming in. The Mediterranean area here, fairly quiet. Handful of smaller quakes out here in the 2 and 3 range. Really nothing major going on. So we'll continue to watch the North American plate out here. Definitely looks like things are still, fairly active. Let's check out Iceland here real quick, see if anything's going on up there with the Live from Iceland site. And as far as I know, it looks like it's still continuing here, the eruption. At least from a visual perspective here, things are still active. It looks like there's only one vent remaining active, though. These other couple ones here have toned down. I don't know. I haven't really been watching this too often here. Been paying more attention to the earthquakes going on across various places of this planet. But, yeah, ongoing eruption here across the area of Iceland. Let's see if we got any new activity to report here. This update was put out a couple days ago, and they just kind of chatted about the elevated sulfur dioxide levels from the volcanic gases in the area there of Iceland. But really no new change going on there from what I can see. All right, quick glance here at the space weather activity on the sun. Looks like, that looks a little creepy looking. Some horns on the sun. That's not good. Those are actually prominences there. Could be blasting off pretty soon. Directed away from Earth, obviously, in that location. We're left with, here's the sunspot feature. We got 36, 28, and a couple other very small, stable sunspots. I don't see a whole lot of hope here from these sunspots that are currently facing Earth in terms of flaring potential. Maybe some C-flare activity. This thing over here is still fairly stable, but it's a little bit of growth back along this edge here. That's about the only form of complexity that I can see within this magnetogram image. Also over here, that one's not even really worth looking at currently. Across the eastern limb, looks like a handful of smaller quakes coming around the bend. We'll have to pay close attention to that as they venture further towards the Earth-directed view. These are the current Earth-facing sunspots. Here's the western limb over here. There's 3615 on the far side of the sun. The culprit that has given Earth quite a few M-flares here recently, back when it was on the Earth-facing side of the sun. We'll see if that comes back around the bend, within a couple weeks or so. It's about halfway. This is the latest model right here. Still shows very dynamic. This almost looks like a face. 2 eyes and the face coming around. Goodness. All right, so as you can see over here on the eastern limb, this is going to be the eastern limb here. Technically, it should be over here, but just the way this is set up, there's not a whole lot coming around. Some very weak sunspots. We'll have to watch this area, see if it makes it back around. It's holding pretty steady. If that does come back around here in a couple weeks, we should see elevated space weather activity once again. All right, so far as flaring activity goes, looks like 40% chance for a C-flare and probably 5% or less for all other categories. Really no auroras in the forecast, unfortunately. Hopefully we can get that to change as we dive deeper into April. All right, guys, cloud cover percentage out here. Goodness, we are getting very close. Today would have been the day I would have been driving out here to Texas to view the eclipse on Monday from Northern California. It's a 24-hour drive. Unfortunately, I made the decision yesterday after looking at all these weather models to cancel my trip out there. I had set up a lot of different stuff, a lot of new equipment to get this documented, but unfortunately, the cloud cover out here is going to be very consistent in certain areas. This is the GFS model for the 18Z time, which is around the eclipse peak totality time there on Monday. The red line here is the totality line. Texas still very covered here with a lot of clouds. If we look at the let's see, does the NAM model cover this? Yes, the NAM model covers this as well. In this area where I plan to stream the eclipse, lots of cloud cover. Maybe at best here some hit or miss clouds into areas in northern Texas. The best spot I think right now is going to be through Arkansas, but these storms are going to be firing up later in the afternoon. So dependent on how quick this moisture pulls in from the Gulf, we could see storms fire up sooner, which would of course block the area of Arkansas as far as the viewing goes. Now the blue is the clouds, the white is the openness. If you look at the mouse cursor here, it shows 0% clouds here across the west coast. Over across Texas, 100% or so. Certain areas up north here, maybe around the Indiana area, might be getting some openings. That's just one weather model there. Also on the Canadian model, a lot of people have been using, is a little bit more open. Look at that. A large line of clarity out here across about central Texas all the way here through Ohio and the totality line. Now that would be awesome if it is. I would love, for the folks out there to be able to witness this. I won't be out there, unfortunately. I got to see the 2017 one back in Oregon. I'll try to catch the next one. I may have to fly somewhere to catch it though. But this model shows a lot of clarity out here, except for the region where I was going to be at there in Texas. So the EMSC model, let's go ahead and check this out here real quick. For Monday at around 11 a.m. right there. And we're going to bring up the clouds and see what we got. Look at all this moisture, high dew points, a lot of humidity coming in, going to be fueling the afternoon storms. This area, again, a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low-level clouds, a lot of moisture pulling into the Texas area, even up into Arkansas. This is the ECMWF model, the European model. Cloud base right here shows where, it, in general, if you look at clouds in general, you see this lighter gray color. That is still cloud cover, and it shows about 29% or so. And that is because these are cirrus clouds way up in the atmosphere. If you look at the base of these, 23,000 feet or so, which is way up there. And depending on how thick they are, could inhibit the sun just as much as these low clouds could. So, it's an iffy situation here. I know the later we go on in the afternoon, the more cloud cover and storms that's supposed to pop up here. Thunderstorms are supposed to be fairly rampant out here. In fact, we got a severe weather event going on for Monday as well across this area. So you got to look at this, got to make a decision. I'm sitting this one out. Unfortunately, I would love to, but my plans have gotten squashed because of cloud cover. Maybe Arkansas, it's going to be hit and miss, I think. We'll cover this a little bit later in the nightly update as well. But I think it's going to bring a lot of disappointment out here to quite a few people that were looking forward to this, such as myself as well. But I'm hoping for some clarity for the folks that will be out here, and hopefully they can see it. Storm Prediction Center. Here's the day 3 outlook. This is going to be on Monday. Got a huge area of thunderstorms out here. Slight risk. That's a big area across Texas and all up along the totality line. Decent chances for some hail and whatnot. We'll cover this a little bit later on as we get closer. But as you can see, there's a decent weather threat here over the next few days down there across Texas and the south. As you can see, it goes on Monday into Tuesday. Well, let's see here. That's Tuesday into Wednesday. It looks even bigger. Goodness. Here's Tuesday into Wednesday. Wednesday into Thursday. And then Thursday into Friday. So, got a good week here of some severe weather potential out here. So, just a heads up. Again, we'll cover that as we get a little bit closer to that date. But, yeah. Let's take a look at these numerical models and see what we have here. April 8th time period, look at storms already firing up around the totality time frame, 18Z on Monday, and that does include a lot of areas up north here. It's going to be one of those things, folks, I think, where you're either going to take the chance to see it or you're not. Taking the chance, at least you'll know if it's going to be cloudy or not. Where I'm going to be, I hadn't planned on going up any further up here because that's just more time. It's already a 24-hour drive for me from California to Texas. The flights are completely packed. You can't find any rental cars out here. Hotels are $700-800 a night, so it wouldn't be good for me to attempt to fly out there. The easiest way would be to drive, but still wasn't looking at adding another 12 hours or so more onto my drive time to see the eclipse. So I will be at home here in California sitting this one out, but we'll cover this and more as we get a little bit closer to that date. Right now, earthquake activity fairly quiet out here on all the seismograph stations, but we'll see how it goes. Things are getting interesting out here, so just be prepared. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. Enjoy your weekend. It's going to be a nice day out here in California, about 65 degrees or so. Not super warm. Next week's going to be up in the mid-80s, so I'll take that. Have a good day, folks. We'll catch you guys back here soon.